This is Contemporary Chinese, Revised Edition, Volume 2, Lesson 10, Words and Expressions, Part 1. So, starting off with a measure word today. The measure word is chang, and it's important to know what it's used together with. So it's things like movies, operas, sports matches, or rain. And as you'll see in the list of vocab here, there's a number of ones that we can use it with already. So we've got 京剧, Beijing Opera. We have 武打戏, which is acrobatic fighting drama. I'll come back to these in a minute. And we also have 电影, and we can also use it with 功夫片. So all of these are a form of entertainment. So 京剧, which we'll look at in a moment, is obviously a live performance. And 武打戏 often is a live performance as well. So if we were talking about going to see a Beijing opera, we would say 去看一场京剧. And we could say the same with 去看一场武打戏. We might say, for example, if we're going to see movies, we might be going to see, say, 2 in succession. So we could say 去看2场电影. And then for 功夫片, for a kung fu movie, again, similar thing. 去看3场功夫片. So chang is very useful for those things. Also, as it says here, can be used for rain. So, for example, I'll just make sure I'm placing this where it can be seen. We might say, just get my Chinese characters up to 今天. No, that doesn't help. 今天. Just wait while that comes on. Yep. 上午下了一场大雨. 今天上午下了一场大雨. So this morning there was a big rainfall. So in English we don't have a specific measure word, but in Chinese they use the measure word chang. Let me just move this across a little bit. There we go. Right. So, 京剧. What is 京剧? So I'm not sure how many of you have seen 京剧 before. So I thought what we do is we just have a brief look at a short segment of 京剧, and in that segment, it's not so much singing, just a tiny little bit of vocab there, but also it demonstrates very well the 武打戏, the 武打, the fighting aspect, acrobatic fighting. So let's just do that. Go there. Okay, so let me just make that small again. Okay, so hopefully that's all come through on the video. So as you can see there, you can see all the acrobatics and the stylized fighting. So obviously they don't make contact with each other and that sort of thing. It's all very stylized. The other interesting thing about Jingju is that all of the roles in Jingju, Beijing Opera, both male and female, are all played by males. And some of you may well have, for example, seen the movie Farewell My Concubine or other similar things. All the roles of the women are played by men. That contrasts with, for example, Yueju, which is opera down in Shanghai, where all of the roles are played by women. So even the male roles are played by women. Okay, so that's a little bit about Jingju. We could talk more about that in the lecture. We shall move on with our vocab list here. So just coming back to some of the vocab, we've got wuda in wuda si. So wuda is acrobatic fighting. And also we've got kung fu pian, a kung fu movie. So in Mandarin, while they do use the word kung fu, generally speaking, martial arts is described using another word. And that is, I'll see if I can find it there. Oops, sorry, I spelled that wrong. You can't see this, but anyhow, it's called Wu Shu. Wu Shu. So that's actually martial arts in general. So in Australia, we tend to refer to martial arts as Kung Fu. But in Chinese, it's actually Wu Shu. And in China, not wanting to spend too much time on this, but in China also there is a very famous saying that relates to imperial officials who are extremely talented. And I think I'm not so sure that it's used that much in the modern day, but anyhow, it is the expression 文武双全，文武双全. So what does that mean? So 文 relates to administration, but it relates to things like, literature, writing, reading, administration. For example, there's the word in Mandarin 文学, which means literature, but it can also mean 文件, which is a document. So officials having to deal with documents and so on. 武 is from 武术, which we just talked about a moment ago. So, and then we have 双, which means a pair, and 全 means complete. So a really talented imperial official in the past would be really proficient on both sides. So in terms of their administration capabilities, and then also in terms of their martial arts. And so that was referred to as 文武双全, somebody that's extremely talented in both the arts and in martial arts. Okay, so I think we can move on from there. So we have the word for actor or actress, 演员, 演员. So in Chinese, they don't differentiate between the genders. It's all the same word. In that word there, 演员, the character 演 means to perform or to act, as in act in a movie or a play. Yuan is a person who does this. And 演员 can apply to Jingju, it can apply to 电影, it can apply to 功夫片, it can apply to television shows, 电视节目. I might just throw that in there for you in case you're interested. Pop that there. And we've got 电视. And for example, soap opera, 连续剧, which is 电视, which we learned in the last lesson, 连续剧, which equals a soap opera. So even in television shows, they're known as 演员. If somebody is famous, they are 很有名, 很有名. So you could say this actor is very famous. 这个演员很有名. And if you look at the way the word is constructed, 有名 is kind of interesting. It means to have a name. And if you think about being famous, it means that you have a well-known name. So it's an adjective and can be used to describe an actor or a person. It can be used to describe an event or a place. Okay, so 北京故宫很有名. Next one is seat, 座位, 座位. So the difference between this and there's another word 椅子. 椅子. Which equals a chair. So we talk about a chair or a couch or a sofa or whatever it is as one thing, and then we talk about a seat as another thing. So for example, a seat in a movie theater, it is an 椅子, it is a chair of a sort, but it's more related to, ordering a whole large number of seats, and they're in a particular order and they have a number and so on. So 座位 generally refers to things like seats on a plane, on a train, in a bus, in a movie theater, in a lecture theater, those sorts of things. Whereas 椅子 is very specific. It's a type of seat, I guess, if you like. We now have the word for eye, 眼睛, 眼睛. And the measure word for one eye is 一只眼睛. So it is 一只眼睛. So it's that 只, oops, 一只眼睛. We now have the word for newspaper, 报纸, 报纸. Again, if you analyze that word, 报 is the word for to report something. 纸 is the word for paper. So this is a paper that reports something. So it equates to our newspaper. Next word we have is magazine, 杂志, 杂志. I'm not quite sure how to analyze that character. 杂 means mixed or complex. 志 can mean a whole range of things from, ambition, or there's a whole range of different meanings. Not quite sure of the etymology of that word, but anyhow, so the word for magazine is 杂志. Moving along, we next have to understand. It's a verb. And it is pronounced as 懂, 懂. And you may have heard me ask you this before, and certainly if you talk to a native speaker, there will be times when they'll say something to you and they'll follow it with 懂不懂? 懂不懂? Do you understand? And we've learned another word, 明白. 明白, we learned that earlier in the semester. I'll just pop that up there for you. 明白. And that also in our vocab list means to understand. I guess in some circumstances their meaning and their use is similar, but to some extent also 明白 means that you sort of you understand about something. Well, I don't know, maybe something's been explained to you, the way to do something or what needs to be done, and so on, and you can say, oh, yep, so I understand. 我明白. I guess, 懂 more often than not is used in relation to when something is being conveyed by language and the person is asking you, do you understand what has just been said? So for example, a native Chinese speaker speaking to a non-native Chinese speaker. So they at least in mainland China, and at least I guess in the northern parts of China, if they said something to you and they wanted to know, did you actually understand it? it's in the sense of understanding the language of it, then they would use 懂, not so much 明白. But if they felt that you could understand the language, that wasn't the issue. It was just that you may or may not have been clear about what it was that they're explaining to you, or what it was that they, for example, the instructions that they gave you. Then they might use 明白,你明白吗? I guess to some degree they're used interchangeably, although in relation to what we've been learning recently about verbs plus resultative complements. So we've got our verb plus resultative complements. There is a combination which is 听懂, and also, and I think that comes up in this lesson, 看懂. So here we can use the verbs 听 and 看 to listen and to watch or to read. And then if we want to say that through listening we understood, we can say 我听懂了. If we want to say through reading something or watching something that we understood, then we can say 看懂了. I guess you can say, 听明白 or 看明白了. But it's probably more common, I would say, in the mainland to say, 你听懂了吗? 你看懂了吗? Did you understand what I said? Did you understand what you read? Anyhow, we'll see some examples of that in the dialogues for this lesson. Moving along, we now have taxi, 出租车, 出租车. And if you look carefully, that actually relates very closely to a word that we learned in the previous lesson. So when we were talking about renting out accommodation, we used the expression 出租 to literally out rent. And now really all we've done is add 车 for vehicle. So this is a vehicle that is rented out. These days this word, it's still used, there's no question, but it may be considered a little bit old. There is another one that they use, which is this one, 的士 taxi. Now, my understanding of this is that this expression 的士 comes from the Cantonese, and the pronunciation in the Cantonese sounds something like taxi. I don't speak Cantonese, so I can't honestly tell you. I think it may sound something like, taxi or something like that, 的士. And so this is one of those words in Mandarin. There are quite a number of words that have come in through other dialects. So in the case of Cantonese, because of Hong Kong, obviously over many years there was a very strong English influence in Hong Kong, and so the Hong Kong Chinese looked for equivalent words in Cantonese to match a lot of English words that they were using on a regular basis. And so words like taxi, they had their equivalent, taxi, whatever it is. And because, of course, Cantonese and Mandarin share the same writing system, when they write the Cantonese word for taxi, it's those characters. And there have been different periods where in the mainland it's been kind of popular or trendy to adopt words from Cantonese. And this is an example of one of those words, except that, of course, the characters in Mandarin are pronounced differently than in Cantonese. So the sound comes out quite differently from the Cantonese original and, of course, from the English word. So 的士 doesn't sound anything at all like taxi. But anyhow, it's been adopted. It's a term that's been around for a long time now. So if you hear somebody talking about 的士, you'll know what they're talking about is 出租车. And if you use the word 出租车, people will completely understand you. It's not an issue. So moving along, sometimes we run into a situation where there is a traffic jam. Now, if you notice, I just used the expression a traffic jam. So I've used it as a noun in English. But if you look at the Chinese word, it is actually a verb. And the word is 堵车. 堵车. And it's one of those verb-object combinations. So the first character is the actual verb, and 车 is a noun, and we've come across 车and 出租车 and other words. The character 堵 means to block up, to clog up. So if you think about it, it's a clever word. It means that, you know, cars or vehicles have all sort of blocked up in a particular area or road. They've clogged up. So in Chinese they don't say 一个堵车. They don't have, as far as I'm aware, they don't have a noun for traffic jam. So they use the verbal expression 堵车. So you might say now the road outside is locked up in a traffic jam. 现在外面的马路堵车. And if you wanted to express the fact that the traffic jam is really bad, for example, you can use a word that we learned a couple lessons ago, 厉害. 厉害. So, for example, you could say, where can I put this? I think this should be visible. You can say 堵车堵得很厉害。堵车堵得很厉害. So again, we repeat the verb part of that overall verbal expression, 堵, and that's saying that the traffic jam is really bad. So now we have don't worry. And I think actually we've learned another expression. So this expression here is 放心. 放心. 放 is to place something somewhere. 心 is one's heart or one's mind. So whether, you know, you could say it's like to put your mind at ease. In other words, don't worry. So we have an expression in English which is similar, and I guess it sounds similar because it uses the expression of to put one's mind at ease. The meaning is, of course, to not worry, to help somebody to not worry. But the other expression that we learned earlier on, there was two words that we can combine together to mean a similar thing, and I think we may have even covered it, and that is 别担心. 别担心. And actually, now that I think of it, we learned another one. 别着急. 别着急. So 放心, 你放心吧. So for example, you can see that your friend is nervous about something, they're worried, they're anxious, and you say to them, relax, don't worry. 你放心吧. Quite often, the expression is used when, for example, somebody asks somebody else to do something, and the person that's been asked to do something, they want to reassure the person that's asking them, you don't have to worry, relax, it'll get done. So they'll say, 好好好，你放心吧，你放心吧. Right. Now, next one. We're heading out. We're setting off on a journey. 出发. 出发. So 出, we know, we've seen many times before, meaning to go out. 发, we've seen particularly with words that mean to send something electronically. Now here this has got nothing to do with sending anything electronically, but it does mean to set off on a journey, and that journey could be a short one, as in, you know, just heading off down into the city or something like that, or it could be a longer one where you're heading off to another city. Anyhow, so you might say something along the lines of, you know, it's 8 a.m. We should head off now, set off on our journey. 现在上午8点了，我们该出发了吧? So now it is 8 a.m. We should head off, right? Okay, moving on to the next one, to rush for. 赶. So if you're going from, say, one place to another, and you've got very limited time, and you might be worried about, are you going to make it in time? You can use this word 赶. So you can use that whole idea of the verb plus resultative complement, and you can say 赶. So you might ask the question, will we get there in time? 赶得到吗? 我们赶得到吗? So, can we get there in time? 赶得到. Sometimes if somebody is, extremely busy and they're running up against a really tight deadline, sometimes I'll say 赶时间, 赶时间, meaning that you're rushing against a deadline. And so we'll see some more examples of the use of 赶 in the dialogues. Next one, very. 挺 Generally speaking, it's used in similar ways to 很 or 非常. It's a funny one. We have said before with 很 that it often doesn't necessarily mean very. It's just that with certain words, so for example, let's just take an adjective 漂亮. I'm going to say, he is, or she is pretty. He is pretty. You can say that too. 她漂亮. If you say 她漂亮, as we've said before in the lessons, it sounds like you're starting to make a comparison between 她, that person, and someone else. So if you purely want to say, they are pretty, you would say 她很漂亮, put the 很 before. So really it's a very weak, it doesn't necessarily translate out as, she is very pretty. And we've learned to say, if we want to really emphasize that that's what we mean, we can say 她非常漂亮. But you can also say 她挺漂亮. 她挺漂亮. 挺 is somewhere between, I feel, is somewhere between 很, which is very weak, and 非常, which is clearly very or even stronger, extremely. 挺 kind of sits in the middle. Sorry, I just realized also too, I should try and, I don't think I can raise that up anymore. Let me pull this up here, do my little transition, there we go. All right, so that's 挺, and it's used pretty much the same as 很 or 非常, and it's an adverb, so it goes before adjectives. We have another adverb here, 最好. 最好. Now on the surface of it, it sounds like it's the best. Something is the best. 这个东西最好. And it can mean that. It can mean that. So if you're talking about a particular thing, a place, a person, you're describing something about them, and you want to say, this is the best place, this is the best person for whatever it is, you can say, 这个人最好, 那个地方最好, 那家餐馆, 那家饭店最好, that restaurant is the best. However, you can also use it in an expression where you want to say, where you're making a decision about something, and you're considering certain circumstances that relate to your decision, and there are limiting circumstances. So in the end, when you make your choice, you may be limited to the choices that you can make because of circumstances. So you might say, well, given those circumstances, for example, it might be, well, given that we don't have a lot of time, it would be better if we left a bit earlier. So you would say, 因为我们没有时间，我们最好早一点出发. So I might just put that up there. So you can say 因为没有时间，我们最好早一点出发. Okay, so because there's no time, it would be better if we set out a bit earlier.